Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Elevate podcast, where we talk all things about business. I'm Kush Birdie. I'm your host. I'm the co-founder and managing partner of Birdie & Co. Solicitors, where we act for CEOs, entrepreneurs, founders on a daily basis. And today I'm really excited to introduce our guest, Charlotte Stavrou, who is the CEO of SevenSix Agency. SevenSix Agency is an award-winning influencer marketing agency and has been reported as one of the most influential agencies in the influencer sector. So without further ado, welcome, Charlotte.
Thank you. That's a nice intro.
You like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's definitely warranted. So I just want to say, as a little intro, is I've been really excited to follow your journey and story since I've met you, and I've been really impressed by what you've done and how you've grown. And I've read various things about your business and the reporting stuff that you do and research, and it's really, really impressive. So congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
If you wouldn't mind just maybe doing another intro to yourself and telling us a bit about your personal journey and business journey generally.
So yeah, SevenSix is an influencer marketing agency. We're based in London and we focus on inclusive marketing. So I launched the business in 2019 and it was essentially because I went freelance and I didn't really understand the influencer world outside of my bubble. I'd always worked in-house and I'd been an influencer on one side and then an influencer marketer and social media manager on the other side. So I was living a life of two. Some people say like the Hannah Montana lifestyle. So if you're a Disney Channel kid, that reference you would understand, but if not, then don't worry. But yeah, so always consumed by influencer marketing, but very much to my own terms. So I was working as an influencer just on the side, but then I was working with influencers for my brands. I worked for Hello Kitty for the Sanrio company. I looked after Hello Kitty for the digital side, and then Wah Nails, which was a kind of cult nail salon based in Soho that had roots in Dalston. It was like over a decade old, and we did a lot with influencers and people of influence. So I was really in that world. And then when I left and went freelance, I was working with lots of different companies and I did one stint at an agency for like a couple of months for one project. And I was just like, oh, this is very different to what I'm used to because I was in control of my own budgets. I was in control of who I worked with. And I just saw that the influencer space was really lacking in diversity, not just with the influencers, but also behind the scenes with the marketers and the PRs that were there. And I hadn't really paid attention to that before, but it was 2018 when I went freelance and I was just kind of hit with it. And there were lots of events at that time. I think that was like the peak of when the influencer marketing scene kind of changed and it became what it is now. And in my opinion, and I had so many friends who were creators that were like, this isn't it. Like, I've been invited to these events. I'm the only Black person, the only person of color, the only person from the LGBTQI plus community, the only plus size person. Like, name any like diversity characteristics. They were the only one in the room, or they were put on a campaign and they were paid really poorly, or they just weren't getting campaigns, but they had loads of followers, great engagement. So I was like, right, I want to do something that fixes this. And being the just naive, strong-minded person, I was like, I can do that. Like, how hard can it be? And I wasn't sure what starting an agency consisted of because I've never really worked in an agency, but I'd paid agencies for the companies that I've worked in, and they were my suppliers. So I was like, how hard can it be? I'm smart, and it's actually really hard, turns out.
Yeah.
But I did it, and yeah, for the last nearly 5 years, I've been kind of riding the wave, and you've been a big part of the journey in the last year. I'm actually one of Kush's clients, so we've gone from working with brands, pairing them with creators, then building out a talent management division, and then a network which is called our Creator Club, which has just under 2,000 creators at the moment that we work with non-exclusively. And then we obviously do influencer marketing campaigns with clients, bringing in our talent, bringing in our Creator Club. We write reports on diversity and inclusion within the creator space. Throughout this podcast, I'll use the word creator and influencer interchangeably.
Yeah.
They are the same word. My brain just uses them at different times. But yeah, and we have spent the last year really focusing on just making ourselves a really strong, sustainable business in the sense that we have legs, like we will last the test of time. Because when I first started the business, I was relatively young and also had no business experience. I studied languages at university. I had no business economics experience. I just started. And 3 years in, I was like, oh, this maybe isn't how you should be running a business. And then as time's gone on, I realized we were really good at the job, but
Mhm.
not necessarily like the business itself wasn't thriving because I didn't know how to do things. So this last year and a half, I've done like a finance course. I've worked with my accountants to, they basically have trained me up to be a CEO, which I've been really grateful for. I've worked with you guys to really like strengthen our contracts and make us like legally sound. And yeah, 2024 is going to be a really good year because we're all set up now.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And there's so many things to draw from that. Where do I begin? I think that the first thing I would say is that you've set up the agency. You just mentioned you had no previous business experience, but it just shows if someone out there is looking to set up a business and they have like a vision and a
Mm,
belief and a driver. You mentioned issues that you've spotted in the industry surrounding diversity and inclusion. I think that's just shows that anybody can out there and actually set up a business and
yeah.
do what you're doing now, which is thriving in the business, which is really amazing. Um, so I think in terms of the diversity and inclusion point, um, what what are you starting to see now, I suppose, because obviously it's an issue that you talk about
Mm,
and promote. Are you starting to see any signs of improvement, or is that where you come in and kind of
yeah.
um, promote the interests of, D&I when you're negotiating, with brands, that kind of thing? Is that the kind of thing that you've seen?
Yeah, so there's definitely been in the last few years an up and down. So 2020 obviously was the height of the BLM resurgence. We had
Mm,
diversity being front of conversation, front of mind for everyone, I'd say, especially in the UK and the US. And then 2021, so as a business, we grew really quickly in 2020, considering we launched in 2019.
yeah.
Um, we launched talking about diversity. Went in to pitch to a couple of companies, literally like three, and all of them were like, we don't have an issue with diversity inclusion. Like, but I love what you're doing. So when I first started, I worked with clients that I knew and they didn't necessarily have a D&I problem, but they wanted influencers. So I was just focusing on making inclusive campaigns and that was fine. But then in 2020, when um, everyone was talking about how we need to talk about Black content creators and how we need to, get more Black people in the workplace. And then it trickled down to like diversity in all senses of the word.
Mm,
We just grew like that overnight, which was
wow.
honestly one of the scariest moments of my life, to the point where I posted a video on Instagram. I think I had 8,000 followers at the time. And overnight it got circulated from like Zoella posted it to Gillian Anderson posted it like on
Wow.
her feed. Like there was like so much that went on. Lily Allen reposted it, and then overnight I got 22,000 followers
What?
on my Instagram, and I was on 30,000. We were on like Zoom together, and she was
Yeah.
like holding her phone, and she was like, "What is going on?" And it was just going. Drrrr. So I just had to switch off. But that was like the peak. That was when we were like, okay, we're really busy and we got back to back work. It was amazing. 2021 was also arguably a really busy year for us. And then 2022, we definitely saw a dip of people just having any sort of interest
Mm,
in the diversity chat. People just stopped caring. They'd moved on. There were different things to talk about, which is fair. There was other things to talk about in the world, but it doesn't mean that you put everything that you've
mm,
committed to on, the back burner. Um, and then now 2023 going into 2024, I don't think it's front of mind for many businesses, and businesses like mine are there to remind people that, you really have to think about these things. But there are now so many more agencies that have uh, emerged in the last 2 years, 3 years that, if not do similar things to what 7Six does, at least has the same ethos. So talent management agencies that focus on people of color or specifically Black creators, um, inclusive conversations. There aren't that many inclusive marketing agencies that do influencer marketing, but there are lots of agencies that focus, that have a big, strong inclusivity kind of uh, motto, conversation, whatever. But I don't know, it's been up and down. I'm hoping going into this new year, we'll see more chat. And we write a pricing report every year.
Mhm.
So we started it in 2020 and released it in 2021. Then we did one in 2022, one 2023. And we're writing the 2024 update as we speak. And so I assume when this comes out, it might be out already. But we focus on how much creators should be pricing themselves, which I think is really important because the creator world is pretty much the wild, wild west. You've seen like the contracts and how
Yeah,
things work.
yeah.
You know, it's crazy, but there's no standardized payment structure for anything. And a lot of people come into the industry and they have no idea how much they should be charging, and they're really taken advantage of. And
Mm.
there's things that you should be charging outside of your rate, you know, for usage fees and the different types of deliverables. And there's so many things that add on for your rate to grow. But people just don't know this information. It's not accessibly out there. And my question is why? So we created a survey and we surveyed creators and PRs and industry folk to understand how much creators were charging based on their following, their engagement, and their ethnicity. And then we also spoke to industry people, and then they just told us how much they pay people without even talking about ethnicity, race, or any kind of diversity characteristics. And the numbers were so skewed because they were obviously not thinking, they were thinking of their specific type of influencer. And there was huge discrepancies between different creators from different backgrounds. And essentially, Black creators and South Asian creators get paid less than white creators. And probably across most industries, that is also a fact. But we can change that, and we can change that easily by just telling people how much they should be charging and what their worth should be, and then telling brands and agencies they know that now, so this is how much they're going to charge.
Yeah.
So that's what the report is for. And then the one that we're doing this year will just lean more into that and also pull out more diversity characteristics that we can look at. So there's a huge age pay gap in the influencer space. Once you get past 40 or like visibly 40, then your pay definitely decreases. There's also a disability pay gap. So if you have a visible disability, you are more likely to get paid less than someone who doesn't. So we want to talk that through and just try to make it, you know, as equal as possible.
Yeah.
And we're the kind of equity to create equality, I see.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Really, really, really important and interesting. And I've actually read the report a few times. I just find it really interesting, just the different angles that the report comes from, and actually the different platforms as well.
Yeah.
Where actually the way you've assessed it might be on impressions or likes or followers or whatever, depending on the platform. And I thought that was really interesting as well. So, do you think that you mentioned before that influencers perhaps maybe they're not aware of maybe their own worth or how to negotiate their contracts in terms of usage rights, maybe exclusivity, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. Do you think it's a good thing in the sense that it creates the flexibility of the negotiations, or do you think there should be some kind of standard, a default approach to negotiate from there?
I don't think we can have a standard kind of pay structure
Mm.
in the sense of like, if you have this many followers, you get paid this amount, simply because there are so many things that can change that. It can change based on the type of content that's being created. You know, I might film something with my iPhone, whereas someone else might film with a complete production studio. I think if you do that and it's needed, then like you should be charging a little bit more. I might be, if I say I'm a beauty creator, I might be a qualified doctor, and when I give my reviews, it's based on like medicine, or, medical expertise. Whereas if I was a beauty creator that didn't have that background, or I wasn't even an esthetician, I was just a consumer who posted about it, I think maybe there's an opportunity to charge differently there. That kind of professional creator, I personally believe, has more of a stamp of approval for products, so they can charge more. Also, if it's a charity who is a non-profit, and doesn't have like loads of backing, there are different I don't know what they're called, but there's different charities. Some of them are funded and it's like a business. Others are just everything's donations.
Sure.
So like if it's a donation based charity and they need to work with influencers and they're happy to pay, they might not have the same budget than a charity that has, maybe I think like Oxfam have, like they're a business.
Yeah.
So that may be different. So I think there's so many nuances when it comes to campaigns, and we need to think about that. But like if you're a big business and you tick all the boxes of like you've got the money, you've got the resources, you've got the legal team, you should be paying like a good amount. But then that is usage. Are you putting money behind that piece of content into Facebook or Meta or TikTok, and it's going to be up there for 5 weeks, and you've put £20,000 behind it? That's a different price if it's up for 1 week and you're putting £100 behind it. So look, there's so many different things that you have to think about, and I don't think we could just have like this is how much you should be paid. And I don't think that's like we should do it, like we should want to do that, because that's where people can make money. And it's not just the creators that make money off it, it's the businesses as well. Because if you are going to put money behind content, you're probably going to get more, you're definitely going to get more sales, because more people are going to see it, more people are going to click, so you're able to make more money. So it should be that we all make money and not just whoever's like getting the content.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's really interesting. So the reality then is either an influencer or creator needs to be educated, firstly, in terms of what they should be thinking about, and maybe knowing what their value is from a commercial standpoint.
Yes.
And or having somebody there on their side to deal with those negotiations on their behalf, which is where someone like you would come in, presumably, to help deal with that. Is that right?
Yes, not me personally,
Yeah.
as we know, but so I have a team, and the talent team headed by Rihanna. She looks after all of that side. I am really good at strategy and talking about your worth, but I'm really bad at negotiations and replying to emails and things like that, because that's just not how my brain works. But the dedicated team do an excellent job, not even really good, excellent job at that. But having a manager or an agency isn't a requirement for a creator. I think it's really important to know when you need one or if you need one. I have lots of people that I do strategy for, that they come in and they pay me just to do a day of strategy, and then we meet however often, but they don't need a manager because they've decided to book like a PA or a VA to deal with their emails, and then they understand their worth. They know how contracts work. They can negotiate, and they've got that down. And I work with lots of people who are really good at that. But then there are also lots of people that either aren't good at it or don't want to do it. Like I personally, I know my worth because I literally write the report on how much people should be paid. But I don't want to negotiate, and I don't want to do all of that stuff myself. So I luckily have a team that does it for everyone else. They do it for me. But I know that I personally would need a manager. But I have lots of friends who don't have management and they do so well, but it's because they just know. And I think it depends. And also there are different types of managers. Some managers I was talking about this with another talent manager yesterday, and we were chatting, and it was like there are some people who have managers who literally just screen their inbox. If the creator's big enough, they just get loads of messages constantly. So they just screen their inbox and then they reply, they do negotiations, and that's that. But they're not actually actively finding them work, building their strategy. Like the creator is just doing everything by themselves, but they have someone, which is, in my opinion, essentially just having a virtual assistant. But there are other agencies that are more like us and some of my friends' agencies that we create your strategy. We go out to brands, we pitch for you, we come up with ideas with you, we help you turn your kind of vision into reality, which is really, really fun and really important. But some people can do that by themselves, and other people need help or want help. And a, I don't think there's anything bad with needing help or wanting help. Both are different, but both are important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. So coming back to, I guess, more about the business side, I suppose. Actually, been wanting to ask you this question. Where did the name 7/6 Agency come from?
I love when people ask this question, and not many people do. And I'm glad you asked this question because I think you'll like it. So, 7/6 is a nod to the 1976 Race Relations Act, which
Oh,
is now the Equality Act for 2010. When I was choosing a name for the business, I really wanted something that was catchy and cool, but also meant something. There needed to be depth. And I am a person, I feel like I have depth, and I wanted my business to not be something that's just surface level. And it was really hard to choose a name. And I spent 3 to 4 months literally just sitting, just trying to figure out a name. It was from November 2018 until February 2019 when I registered the business. And it was so hard. And my husband kept saying, Charlotte, it's not that deep. Come on, just find a name. And in the end, he was like, are there any numbers? Because I was being ridiculous. I was sending messages to some of my friends and I was like, right, because I'm Jamaican. So I was like, in patois, maybe we could like come up with find a phrase that could like work. And one of my friends was like, you need to chill. Like, I don't know what's going on, but none of this is going to work. I have this list on my phone where it was like the most random words. It was actually quite embarrassing. Like reading them through, I was like, wow, I was really struggling. But then I thought about numbers and I was like, what were important times in history in the UK specifically? And 1976 was a really big year, like in the legal side. It was a really big year for race relations and it was a really big year for women. It was the year that from I'm not in the legal side, but from my research, the year that the discrimination laws changed for uh, people of color and um, also for women, because 74 was a big year, but 76 was like a really big year for so many reasons. I don't know why, but it was a really big year. So that's where we went with it. But now everyone calls us 76 Agency, 67 Agency. There's so many, but I'm just like, we're 7/6. I used to get really annoyed by it, but now I'm just like, who cares? Just as
yeah.
long as you know there's a 7 and a 6, I don't mind.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a really good story actually. I really like that. And so you went for the word 7/6 rather than the number.
Yeah, I don't know why. It just sounded cooler to me. I just wanted it had depth, but also I needed it to be cool and
Yeah,
catchy.
it is cool. It is cool.
And there's a big trend for agencies to have number names, and I think I wanted it to be slightly different. So yeah, I went for
Oh, really
7/6.
cool, really cool. So in the business then, what would you say your leadership style is like? And has that evolved over time or
Yes, it's definitely evolved over time. Um, I am. I like to think I'm a very kind person. I I think a lot about how people feel. But I'm also, I know this, I'm a people pleaser. So I have to navigate that quite a lot. And so when I first started, I've got a team of the 7 of us. I started with a team of 2, and that was so much easier because that was
yeah.
just me and like a girl that went to my school's cousin, a girl that went to my school's sister. And it was just us just vibing and just getting stuff done. And then my sister joined in 2020, and then we built out a whole team together. And at first, I was just like, I just want everyone to like me and I don't want to be mean. I had once a boss that was, in my opinion, a little bit too mean. The way she dealt with her team to me felt unnecessary. But I think also it came from, now being a founder, I understand she was young and inexperienced and didn't have much leadership experience in her career, which I can totally um, empathize with. But instead of thinking, oh, I should probably work on that, she was just really, really horrible. And it was like quite difficult to watch her lead sometimes. And I just knew I didn't want to be that person. But I think I went at the beginning maybe too far the other way. And now I focus on being fair, which sometimes comes with telling people off, but in a way that I'm not like, I don't shout at people. I just say like, my whole thing is we're all grown ups. I don't employ children. Like, we're all grown up, so we all have to take responsibility. So if you do something wrong, I'm telling you because it's wrong. You'll recognize it and you should just own up to it and then go for it. And that's always, my team are really good. Like, if something happens and I'm like, why did this happen? They're like, yeah, do you know what? I'm really sorry. I won't do it again. And it never happens again. Everyone's learning. So I really understand that. Also, everyone thinks in different ways. Um, my leadership style definitely comes from my personality and how my brain works. So a couple of months ago was I went to a private clinic, and because I felt like there was something off, and I knew it, I just couldn't put words to what it was. And essentially I found out that I'm dyslexic and I have a crossover with ADD, and everything just made total sense. But the man that diagnosed me basically said that generally, because I was like, a lot of my friends are actually neurodivergent. There's a lot of us, and he was like, you're kind of like, well, he's also neurodivergent. He was like, we're kind of like magnets. We attract, you know, each other. But my team, there's a lot of, if not diagnosed, definitely undiagnosed, and I am now that person that's like, I think you might be dyslexic. I think you might have ADHD. But there's definitely a lot of neurodivergency in the team, and I like to try and work with people in the way that they need to be worked with, or try to discover how the best way to work with them is, which means I put more time into people than I think other business owners and founders would do, because I just know that I have always had bosses that have given me time, bar like one. My first boss of my proper job, he really put everything into me. He allowed me to be the person I am today. He put me on courses. He sent me to America to learn. He knew I was like excited by social media. He wanted me to learn from like growth marketers in the US, and he like let me have time to absorb all of that information and do things in my own like way. And and he knew that like my team were in the US and I wasn't very good at timings. Like, I'm a night owl. I work really well in the nighttime, but like mornings are my worst. And he knew like, you know, Charlotte's gonna come in late, but he was just like, justify that by staying late and you working with your American team. That's cool. So he just allowed me to thrive. My next job, again, I worked in a very specific way. It was totally different to everyone in that team, but my creative director, who he was on the same level as me. We're both Aries as well, so it made so much sense. But I was just like, given opportunity, which I don't think many people. So hearing other people's stories, I haven't heard many of those stories. So I want to do that with my team, and I essentially just try and figure out who they are based on their personalities, their horoscopes, their like Myers-Briggs tests. Like, I make them do all of that at the beginning. They give me all this information, and then I'm like, right. Then I watch them work, and then I can see, you know, some of them are really good at timing. Some of them like to be handheld, and that can be a good thing. They need to be shown support. So I have to know to put in extra meetings with them. Some of them are lone rangers and just go and come back and do what they need to do. So it's just meeting them where they're at. And then if they need support, just trying to give them as much as possible. And then, you know, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But like, so far, out of all the people that have come through the business, most of them, that approach has worked. Some of them, my approach might be too soft and they need a bit more of a rigid, harder boss. And I'm just not that person. But yeah, it's quite a airy-fairy kind of like holistic approach to leadership and management. But I like it, and I want it to be that way.
It's crazy, isn't it? Because when you're trying to grow a business, which is relatively new, is that fine balance between being sort of stern, fair, of course.
Yeah.
Fair, I think, is the key, isn't it? Where
Yeah.
that's the best sort of equilibrium kind of point, just as long as you're being fair. And I think trying to give people the best opportunity as well to thrive. and then hopefully things work out, which it seems to be, with the
Yeah.
majority of people for you, which is amazing. And I think at the end of the day, you just want to feel, okay, this person's had all the support that they
Yeah.
should be getting. I feel like I've sort of done everything that I can for this person, and hopefully it results in a thriving situation. And I think that's ultimately what it's about. But I can definitely resonate with your side of maybe starting out maybe a bit too nice, that kind of
Mm.
thing, as I've been through a similar journey as well. And again, arrived at a fair, fair
Yeah.
is the right way. So yeah,
It's
that's really
really
good.
hard though,
It's
because
very difficult.
there isn't really, obviously there's like leadership courses and stuff, but I don't think you're not taught how to lead just generally
Mm.
unless you're in a big corporate and they give you that training. And I've never had leadership training. But also, sometimes you're having a bad day. It's like, which I try to be really clear with my team. If I come into work and I'm like, I'm really tired, or this has happened to me, or there's something going on in my personal life that I don't want to talk about, but I'm not feeling great. I try to like say that from the beginning of the day, to be like, I might be off today. I'm not off with you. I
Mm.
just don't feel my normal self. So this is how I'm going to be. Um, but I'm not, this isn't directed at you. This is just who I am right in this minute. Tomorrow I'll be fine. And I tried to do that because there's been so many times where I've seen people at work and they've been like, what feels, especially as someone who is a people pleaser, it feels like they hate me. And
Yeah.
then I don't know what I've done wrong. It turns out, it might be like they're on their period, or they didn't sleep last night because whatever, or they're hungover, or they've got a migraine, or all these things, but they haven't communicated it. And then you're
Yeah.
like, all day, you can't stop thinking about what have I done? I'm a horrible person, but actually it's just like something small in their life. So I like to do that. But I also like to check on my team. Like yesterday I had a meeting with two of the girls, and one of them, who is the happiest person I've ever met. Like I don't think I've ever seen her, apart from one time when I maybe told her off and she was like, I was like, oh my God, I've broken her. But she is always so smiley and so like amazing to be around. She's one of my favorite people just to be around. She looked really angry during this meeting, and the whole time I was like, what have I done? What have I done? And at the end I was like, oh, could you just stay? And she was like, yeah. And it was on Zoom and we had this chat, and I was like, are you okay? And she was like, yeah, I'm ill. And I was like, oh, thank God. Because I was like, people please. I was like, what have I done? I was
I
like, have
know,
I
right?
done something? Have I not like replied to one of her messages? Like, what is it? And she was like, I'm just not feeling very well. I've got a really bad throat or whatever. And I was like, okay, I'm really sorry about that. Like that's really, really sad. But in my head, I was like, oh, thank goodness, because
Yeah.
there's nothing worse than feeling like, for me, and so many people will not like understand this, but feeling like I've done something to
Yeah.
someone, I will then not be able to stop thinking about what I've done. And that consumes me, which I really need to get over. But I just think that's part of my personality. And I don't know if I can.
Yeah, no, I think I go through similar experiences as well, to be honest with the team, and sometimes you have to be a bit firmer, but then you kind of sometimes feel guilty. It's sort of like, oh
Yeah.
gosh, I really didn't want to do that, and you want obviously trying to keep morale high as well and keeping everybody motivated. So it
Yeah.
can be really difficult. But also, I think it's important to acknowledge as well that sometimes like you need that support as well. So I think that once if the team know that as well, which I'm sure that they do, then
Yeah.
it's kind of like it's not always, we're not always 100% as well.
Yeah.
So it's important to acknowledge about yourself as well, which you
That's a big thing.
probably do, to be
Yeah.
fair.
My team are really good at that. Um, a few months ago when I got my diagnosis for dyslexia, I was having lots of problems at work that I couldn't pinpoint. And dyslexia, I didn't realize is a spectrum. So, like the type of dyslexia, if it's a type that I have, is a processing issue. So it takes me a long time to process certain things.
Mm.
I'm really good in speaking um, moments, process, but sometimes it takes me a minute to like think of words, especially if I'm tired, or like if I go to an event. Like I used to have an employee, she's moved companies now, but have you ever seen The Devil Wears Prada?
I haven't actually,
Okay,
no.
right. So it's a really big part of the film where Emily, the PA, stands behind Meryl Streep's character when she goes to like the Met Gala or something, and she basically tells her the name of everyone that she meets. And it's really common, like presidents do it, and they have
Mm.
like their assistant who like is like, oh, this is Sandra, you spoke to her at this event, and da da da. So I used to have an employee that used to do that with me because I had this thing where I just could never remember anyone's name.
Yeah.
And actually, I've realized it's a processing issue that I know these people's names, but it takes me about 15 to 20 minutes to remember someone's name when I meet them in like a networking situation,
Mm.
because my brain is thinking about so many different things that I can't like, unless it's like someone I know really well. But even the other day, like it happened and there was a girl that I know quite well and I just couldn't remember her name. So I sometimes at networking events, and I really want to have like this sign to be like, I'm not rude. I just literally cannot at this moment in time remember your name, but in 15 minutes I will. But she used to come with me and used to help me. But I've always had team members who have been really, without even knowing, they've been really just patient with me. But when I got my dyslexia like results, and he really talked me through like what I'm good at, what I will need support with, and ways that I can thrive. And some of the things that I was really struggling with was I was always the bottleneck. So like things would come in and then I would take them, and then it was my job to read them or do something with it and then give someone that job. But it takes me a really long time to process text. So like when you send me contracts to read, that I'm really slow, but it takes me ages because I have to really concentrate and I can't read them in one
Yeah.
spell. But Rihanna, who is my sister and we're polar opposite people, is a contract whiz. Like
Really.
she reads contracts, and I think it's because it's her job.
Yeah.
She reads them so quickly, and she read through. You've sent us 2 contracts recently. She's read through them, and there's one that I still haven't got through, and it's been like 3 weeks, and it takes me a really long time. But having the team has always helped me. But I've always kind of made it harder for myself in the sense, so I'm like, well, I should be able to do this. So like I need to get on it. But when I spoke to the team and I was like, right, the professor said these kind of things would help. So I now record all of my meetings. I have like an audio recorder that transcribes my meetings because I make lots of notes, but then I'm getting distracted. So like that's really good. I do a lot of press, but if I have to write the press out, like if they're making me do like an interview, that's going to take me ages because I procrastinate with things that are text based. So I need to be interviewed. So the team are like, well, I'll interview you and we can get it done really quickly. And I was like, oh, okay. But they all just came to me with different ways that they could work with me that would make things more efficient. And I was I like at the Christmas party last week, I was quite teary because I was like, I felt so supported. I'm going to get teary again. I felt so supported because they actually sat there and said, no, this is cool. Like, it's not that big of a deal. We've got this. Like, we just need to do certain tweaks and we could be way more efficient. I think also they were probably tired of me like holding things back and making things take ages. But it takes me, I'm super creative and I am dubbed like within the team as queen of strategy. So if you come with me and you're like, Charlotte, I want to do this, like we were talking about podcasts earlier, I can like reel off all of these things, but it might take me a long time to put that in a deck or to write a proposal. But I'm really good at creatively thinking about, which is part of how my brain works. I'm like a blue sky thinker, and that's really common in entrepreneurs and also people who have dyslexia and ADHD. But they can help me do both. Be that creative, be that blue sky thinker, be really good at strategy, but then also get it done quick enough so that the clients aren't waiting. And that's always been an issue, like responding to emails. I've always been a bit slow, but now I've got a PA who in the last 6 months has completely transformed my life. And I owe a lot to her. And next year, I'm really excited to see how we work because we've just figured out more and more ways to work. And the team just now know how I work, and they're like, Charlotte's not going to do that. Like, there are so many times now recently where they've cottoned on. They're like, we will take that from you because you were never going to do that.
Yeah.
Like that will just sit in your inbox.
Yeah, that's so amazing. Really great insights. And how is that the diagnosis how's that affected you? So has that affected you at all mentally, or has it just been
Yeah.
like you just embraced it and
So I had like a little cry because you have that moment of mourning of like the life you could have had. Like it doesn't seem like a big deal, because when I talk it through, it's like so many people are dyslexic, but so many people also know that they're dyslexic. So when I was at university, I struggled a lot. Like I went to, like I'm state school educated, I come from a working class background, and I went to a red brick uni that had very few people of color and very few state school educated kids. Like on my course, there were 2 state school educated children. We were technically adults, students. And then there were 3 black and black mixed race students, and then a few South Asian. But we were definitely a minority, and the state school situation was a big minority. And I know this because I went back. I went to Nottingham University, and I go back for
Oh, of course you did. Yeah.
yeah, Nottingham. That's why when you were like, oh, Nottingham earlier, I was like, yeah, I love that place. But I love it and I hate it, because I hated my whole uni experience for so many reasons. Now I understand. I was dyslexic and I found it really hard. And I think being dyslexic and also being state school educated, when privately educated people go to uni with like a different, they're basically taught to do things university level. So when I got to uni, I didn't know how to write an essay, and it was like really embarrassing. And I had to have lots of friends sit with me and be like, no, this is how you structure an essay. This is how it works, because we just weren't taught that way at my school. So I studied languages. I was very good at Spanish. I got in because I am good at Spanish, but not necessarily because I'm good at, I was good at Spanish and English, like literature, because I had an interest in it, but I wasn't necessarily great at writing essays. So I found it really hard. And then when I wrote my dissertation, I found that impossible, to the point where 2 of my friends had to write it with me. And they took time out of writing their dissertation to help me write mine, which I will never, ever forget. And when I found out I was dyslexic, and one of them is dyspraxic. So the fact that I had that help from also another neurodivergent person, I was like, wow, this is crazy to think about that. But she knew at the time, and she got extra help at uni. She had extra time, whereas I needed that, but I didn't know. And I remember having a lecturer who just constantly was just sending me away, and I was asking for help, but he just was like, do it yourself. Like, and I found it so hard. So when I spoke to the guy that diagnosed me, he was like, yeah, like I speak Portuguese. I did Spanish and Portuguese at uni, and my Spanish isn't that great anymore because I don't really use it, but my Portuguese is almost fluent. I'm really rusty though. And I learned Portuguese because I moved to Portugal 2 days after graduation, and then I was there for 2.5 years, and then I was also there for half a year in my year abroad. But the guy said, of course, you're thriving at Portuguese, or you thrived at Portuguese because you lived there. I need to be immersed and shown things, being taught. Like I didn't do very well with Portuguese at uni. Like if I actually looked through my results because I was clearing stuff out the other day for all my modules from university, and Portuguese was really bad, but it's now my strongest language. And if I saw a Portuguese person on the street, like I could speak to them, to the point where on holiday this summer, the Airbnb owner of the place I was staying thought I was Portuguese. He just thought I was, maybe, like, my grammar's a bit terrible, so he was like, oh, maybe she's just a bit dumb. But he was like, what do you mean you're not Portuguese? Because I'm really good. But yeah, it was obvious that to him that I was going to learn from living there, and that university was basically redundant. So I mourned it, but then I was like, cool. And I have a therapist, and we'd been speaking for the last year or so how I felt like something was missing, and I didn't know what it was, and I felt broken. And then I was like, hey, I'm fixed. And she was like, talk me through it. And I was like, everything that I felt like I didn't understand about myself makes so much sense. And it's simply because my brain works in a different way. Because there were so many things that I'd be crying about, and I'd be like, I just feel like I'm not normal. Things would be more difficult for me than like my friends or other people. And then now I know, I'm like, yeah, because they are. And that's fine. Like, obviously it's not ideal, because the education system wasn't, especially at the time when I was at school, built for people who need that extra help. But now I know that, I'm like, cool, let's run with that. And some people take a long time to process, but I think I just needed someone to I knew it. I'd also the things that the guy had told me to do, I'd also put a lot of them into practice before even meeting him, because I'd gone down YouTube and TikTok rabbit holes of like how to create processes in your business. I thought I might have been I might have had ADHD, so I looked really deep into ADHD and what could help people with ADHD. So I kind of like did that stuff already. So he was quite impressed that most of the things he was saying I'd already done. Things like reading, I find I'm a really slow reader, um, way below average, but I love reading. I can read fiction books all day, every day, because that's your imagination does most of the work. But non-fiction books, which are my preferred type of book, I find really hard to read. But I have read lots and lots of non-fiction books that have helped me. Things like money management
Mhm.
books and finance books that I need, but I haven't read them. I've listened to audiobook versions of them, and there's an app called what's it Headway, and it does
Mm.
like 15-minute like summaries of books, which for some books is amazing, but other books you need more in depth. But I like last year went on this like Headway. I mean, it was over Christmas, Headway binge, and honestly listened to about 25 books,
Oh, wow.
and it was all finance related because I was like, I know it was Christmas before, because I was like, I'm gonna get married. I want to make sure I'm in no debt. I need to get my personal life, because as a business owner, I find navigating money really difficult because I focus so much on the business, but I don't
Yeah.
focus on my personal finances, which is really bad. And I'm also very good at just like putting my head in the sand and not thinking about things. So I'd not looked at my personal finances. I was just making sure that the business was like
Hmm.
really perfect. And that was all to a detriment to myself. So I was like, I need to fix this. And I did. And I was really proud of myself. But it's because I got through all these books, but I didn't read them because that would have taken me ages.
Yeah.
Like to read a book takes like a week. That would have taken me like a month to get through that book, to be able to understand it, process it, and like take the information. So I'd already started doing that stuff, but he was like, do more of that. And Spotify have just released I think it was in October, this feature where they now have audiobooks on the app. And honestly, that has changed my life. I know you can get Audible and stuff like that, but
Mm.
I already pay for a Spotify account. It's the biggest app. I've got a massive Spotify widget on my phone. Like it's my most used app. And having these audiobooks, I've listened to this year, I think I've read like 2 books. In the last month, I've listened to 4 books, and I've got a whole list over Christmas of all the ones I'm going to listen to that are all kind of business related, leadership related, and that has changed my life. And it's something so small, but I consume information in that way really well. And some people need to read things, some people need to be told. I need to just listen and be able to like imagine the person speaking rather than reading it, because that just doesn't work for
Yeah,
me.
no, that's so interesting. I think one of the themes that have come out from various discussions that we've had today is how well everybody's different in the way that they
Mm,
think, in the way that they work. So whether it's yourself, reading contracts or not, maybe we should do some video explanations of the contracts for you to help,
yeah, maybe.
which is fine. Or people who are at work and they're working, or if someone's leading a team, trying to have that man and or woman management aspect
Mm,
to a leadership style, which is effectively okay. How does this person work? How does that person work? And it is very, very different. And you quite rightly say as well, the education system is not set up in that way, at least not that I know of, anyway.
yeah.
But it's just a really good theme that I've kind of drawn out from our discussions, which
Mm,
um, is very important. I think that every business owner, every founder, or anybody can draw from that, and
yeah,
if you can take any of that into your personal or business life, I think you'll definitely be adding value to yourself and to others, which is really great, I think.
definitely.
And one of the things I really like about you, Charlotte, is that you're very good at obviously self-improvement and identifying and analyzing sort of yourself or situations, but then you'll it'll be your mission to kind of, delve into that, resolve it, or improve or whatever. And I think that's a really great quality to have,
Yeah.
especially as a business leader. So that's really cool. Okay, so just to kind of finish up on sort of the leadership and leadership side of running a business, etc. Do you have any like tips for business owners on how to nurture and build a team, a thriving team?
I think the first tip would be understand yourself and how you work, because if you don't, then you're going to cause chaos. So I am very specific in how I work, in the sense that I do a lot of things out of hours. So when the team come in, they're like, "Oh, this is done," but I work better in the evening. Not every evening, just some. And there's like certain things that of how my brain works, I just maybe work differently to a boss they may have had in the past. So I try to explain, I know how I work, and I try to explain that to them really early on, of like, this is my personality, this is how I work. I'm not hands-on unless you need to be. Unless you need me to be, I will do whatever you need, but you need to tell me. So communication is a big thing. But then on the other side, knowing exactly how your employees work, because everyone's so different. And in the past, like, I try really hard. I remember we had an apprentice once that I really tried to figure out how she worked, and I gave her so much opportunity to communicate with me. I asked her so many different questions. It was all through Zoom because it was COVID time, so it was hard, but I just tried to understand her. And in the end, I had to let her go because she refused to communicate what her needs were. And it just didn't work. So, and employees and employers need to know that, but just knowing that you can only do your best. They have to meet you. But yeah, so communication, knowing yourself, knowing your team, and then I don't know, just like not taking yourself too seriously. Like, just because you're a boss doesn't mean you have to act like the boss.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of entrepreneurs fail at. I see a lot of business owners that I'm like, your team is scared of you. Like, is that what maybe they want that, I don't know. But does that feel good? Does that, like, going into work to like people that are scared to ask you questions, that doesn't feel like a thriving business, but
No.
some people like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really useful tips. And I'll definitely draw from many things that you've said throughout this discussion as well. So that's really useful for me. Moving on then to more, I mean, this podcast is not really focused on law and legal, but it is probably worth touching upon it because it is relevant in the industry.
And
both
you are a
in.
lawyer. So
And I'm a lawyer. Yeah, absolutely. I would like to know your take on, I suppose, influencers themselves, and we've spoken a little bit about it. But do you think generally influencers and creators are legally savvy, or do you think that there's more that can be done for them to either self-educate, or could there be more resources out there to actually help?
I don't think most influencers are legally savvy, simply because nowadays, especially because TikTok has changed how the market is working. So there are so many more influencers because people have logged into TikTok, started creating content, gone viral, become overnight influencers, which is amazing. There's so much more variety out there. I love it. People would say the market is oversaturated. I just think it's changing. But because of that, you've got people who don't know anything that's going on. They're literally just making videos, and now and again they'll be paid. So that means they don't really know what contracts should look like. They don't know what they're signing. Most of them are signing their life away in perpetuity, and they don't know that word is the devil in our industry. So you don't ever tick that box. They don't know, like, the ASA, which is the Advertising Standards Authority. They don't know that they exist. They don't know that the CMA and CAP exist. They don't know any of these things. So they're not using #ad or ad in their content because they don't even know it is an ad. I have seen that the ASA are working with influencers at the moment, some big ones. I've seen they've done a collaboration with Meta, and in the last couple of months, I've seen some really like influencers that I know and love, who we've also worked with at the agency, posting about advertising guidelines, which has been really good to see, because we know the ASA, and my comments have always been, no one knows who you are. Like, love what you're doing, no one knows. I don't think the rules necessarily make sense also for our industry, because they're quite standard. And I think they can be quite confusing, but I think we're growing into the legal side. So with SevenSix, we're doing literally this week, we've confirmed an event with the ASA for them to train not just us, but our creator club on ASA guidelines, and hopefully other guidelines from the CMA as well, and CAP, because I don't fully understand all of it. And there's two governing bodies and one that writes the rules. There's like one that enforces, one that writes.
Confusing,
Yeah, and in a meeting that we had, they said something, and I was like, what? Everything I've been thinking is a lie all this time? Because they were like, we don't even look after that. I was like, oh. So I thought I was super clued up, because I am like militant with ASA guidelines, but even I have stuff to learn. And that's crazy, because I've read so much. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done, but it's my responsibility in my agency to ensure that our creators know what they're doing, and every talent management agency has that responsibility. And then if you're not managed, if they're part of a creator network like mine, there's lots of others, it's their responsibility. And outside of that, if you've got a job, you should probably know the rules to the industry that you're in. So it is the influencer's responsibility, but I think a lot of them don't realize they're in an industry. I honestly think they just think they're posting videos on the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't see a lot of well, there are some enforcement. Obviously, you hear stories of enforcement, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of it.
It's mainly like Love Island. They do
the really big ones, isn't it?
Love Island and Made in Chelsea, and like I think like Mylene Class once got like, it's that kind of like British celebrities.
Yeah.
They enforce them, and I think they do it to make a point.
Yeah.
So that then people will see it. But I actually don't think people see it still.
Yeah.
Unless like I see it because I get like newsletters from different like insights platforms and things like that. So they put them in their daily newsletters. But outside of that, where are you going to see it? Because no one really cares.
True. Yeah. I think the other thing that I see with the hashtag ad, obviously it applies to gifts as well.
Yeah.
And I see people with gifting and stuff. I don't know if people know that that's also an ad.
Yeah, but apparently that doesn't come under the ASA.
Oh, okay.
Which I was told last week. So that comes under the CMA. And I didn't know that there was a difference. So I was like, what? So because the hashtag ad thing is really important to me, especially gifting, because, legally you're being paid in a gift rather than money. Sure. Like it's the same thing. But if I'm super clued up on it, and I don't know the difference, then there's a big issue. Yeah, that's very true. So I think they need to do more to teach people, and I think they are doing it now. But
yeah, fair enough. And then the other thing I see is the hashtag ad not being placed at the top of the post, where you can see when you go to read more, let's say on Instagram, it's down at the bottom there. You're meant to put it like on the first.
I get tricked because I'm very militant, and if I don't see an ad, I'm like, and I'm getting ready to like send them a DM, and then sometimes it's at the end, and I'm like, okay, this is sneaky.
Yeah, I can understand the temptation, of course,
but it depends. I think it has to be one of the first things that people see. So it technically could be at the end if it's like a short sentence, but if it's going beyond the read more, then
yeah. But then I think if there's not widespread enforcement, then it's kind of like, well, I can get away with this, like type thing.
One of my creators said, if they're not doing it, why do I have? Because they were going through, because I pulled them up and I said, you need to do better. And they were like, look at all these people. They sent me examples and they were like, if they're not doing it, why do I have to do it? Yeah. And I was like,
say to that?
Because I said so.
Yeah. There's also the ethical aspect of that.
Yeah.
Which is key, reputationally, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So but I even see celebrities, they don't do it, but then
no,
it's not being enforced.
But also, I don't even know if they know that they should be doing.
Well, yeah, that's
because again, that's not their job. Isn't to be an influencer. Their job is to be.
They might not even do the post.
Yeah. So I I honestly think that most of the time people just don't know, which is the problem.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So there's more we can do to get that message out there in terms of compliance with the
Yeah.
CAP codes and the guidelines. Um, so, and that's before you even get to the contracts,
Oh
isn't
gosh,
it? So the
contracts
contracts
are.
in your pricing report, you analyze the different contractual elements, at least the main ones, really well. So I recommend anyone to read the influencer pricing
Thank
report,
you.
and I'm looking forward to seeing the 2024 one.
Yes, I'll send it to you in advance so you can have a
Oh,
a
okay.
cheeky look and give me any insights.
Yeah, yeah, that would be cool. And then just a couple of final questions, if that's okay.
Mm.
One of the things I'm really interested to know is brands. Do they enjoy, or do they like it when an agency is involved? Obviously, if you're acting for the brand, then that's one thing. But or do they like to kind of try to circumvent the agencies and try to pick up these influencers directly because of maybe like pricing or negotiation might be more beneficial to them, or is that not really a thing?
I think it used to be. I don't think it's a thing too much now.
Mm.
Every now and again, you might see someone, or like if something we do see is there's like a few PRs or brand managers, and it's normally at agencies that like want to be friends with the creators, which I'm all down for, do that. But like, I have friends, I have actual best friends that I would still have to go through their management. Like, they
Mm.
are my best friends. Like, I have one friend who is, I am her son's godmother, but I would still book her through her agent,
Yeah.
because she has an agent. I There are lots of people that want to be mates, and then they try to do like sneaky things, but then the creators are like, but you have to speak to my agent because like they're my agent. Like, I can't.
Yeah.
That's the contract I have. But generally nowadays, I think there's a bit of respect for, well, there's a lot of respect for that agency creator situation. And I also find that when we do book creators through agencies, 9 times out of 10, it's easier. Not all agencies. I find there are certain agencies, especially the bigger ones, that are more like, they have like celeb clients. They are so hard to work with. And I'm just putting it out there. If you are an influencer that's with one of these big letter agencies and you think that you're being well looked after, they're probably taking a really long time to get back to the brand or the agency that's working on the campaign, and they're probably making it really hard,
Mm.
because that's pretty much the only time we find it difficult. But generally there's a lot of respect, and it is easier to work with an agent than it is with an influencer, because the influencer, you just want them to create the content.
Mhm.
The agent, you want to do all the kind of like
Yeah.
nitty gritty.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's interesting. It's good to know. And I wonder if I'd like to know from you, have you ever experienced a situation where maybe like the legal contract or legal issue has actually had a significant impact on a negative impact on a campaign or some kind of project?
Yes. One, you worked with us on one. But there was a campaign that we did where there was a creator on it that was really difficult to work with. They were rude, really disrespectful to not just my team, but the client, the brand. The content they created was fine. There was nothing to fault, but it was just like not great. But then there was also a mistake in the content that we couldn't sort out because they just went offline and disappeared straight after it was posted, and that was that. But our contract wasn't strong enough to do anything about it. So we came to you and we were like, okay, these are all things that happened. Can you just tweak our contract? Because we've never had that experience, and our contracts have always been pro creator. But that has made me realize that we do need more protection. So we now are protected to ensure that if things like that happen again, then we can do something about it. But yeah, that's the first time I've had any issues. We often get, late content is always a thing, which it happened. It's annoying, but like I get it. Like I've definitely sent content through late. I have a full-time job as well as being a content creator. If you're a full-time content creator, I don't know why your content's late. This is literally your job. Do your job. But if you're straddling different things. I get it, and we normally try to be a bit more lenient when we know that they've got another job or, a family. That is, to me, is also a job. So like I get that. But generally that's the only thing that we've ever had issues with. And on the other side, the things that we find more frustrating is that we work with creators who don't know their worth. So we'll start the process and they're like, oh yeah, that's £200 for the post. And we'll be like, so we've priced it up and this is like a £2,000 contract. So we'll either have to meet them somewhere because that gap's like crazy, or we'll pay them if we've got like full budget, we'll pay them that. But that's one thing, like on the positive side, I guess, where in the contracts we work with a lot of creators that are just not in the professional creator mindset.
Yeah.
So we have to like walk them through what that looks like. And it's like, okay, we're going to put paid spend behind the post to like this is what that means. So that's why you get more money, or you know, you're exclusive to us for this amount of time. This means please be aware that you can't work with these brands. Like we do have to walk a lot of people through things, but we've never, apart from like one campaign, we've never had any issues in the past, and I hope that continues.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if not, we're protected with our contracts now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, from that, it is important to obviously have adequate contracts in place, and it's important to understand that contracts, once you've got a contract in place, it's not the end of the matter. You obviously have to keep reviewing the contracts to
Yeah.
see if any improvements can be made to make sure that they're continually being fit for purpose to protect yourself, which is what you're doing. But thankfully, that's not been a regular occurrence,
Yeah.
which is great. Oh, well, thanks so much, Charlotte. If for anybody listening, if anybody wants to contact you or your team to discuss maybe engaging with you or anything else, how can they reach out to you?
Yes, you can find us everywhere as 7/6 Agency, but the letters, not the numbers. So SEVENSIX Agency. Go to our website, 7sixagency.com, and we have a contact form if you want to drop us a line. But if you're a creator, definitely head to the site and find the Creator Club menu drop down and sign up to the Creator Club. We do some amazing things. If you're a brand or another agency that wants to work with incredible creators and have inclusive campaigns, then contact us. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thanks, Charlotte. I thoroughly enjoyed the chat. Thank you very
Thank
much for being
you.
here.
No, thanks for asking me. This was great.
Cheers. Thank you. And that's all.